The desert stretched out like a promise broken long ago, flat and endless under a sky the color of
I
hammered
know what
brass.
you've done.
Heat
You
rose
don't
in slow
understand.
shimmering
Then make
waves
me
from the red
understand.
earth,
It's not that
blurring the
simple.
line where sand met horizon, until the whole world seemed to waver like something half remembered, half imagined. On a slight rise where the land lifted just enough to catch the wind, stood Mission Santa Margarita. Four walls of sun-bleached adobe, thick as a man's arm, span topped with clay tiles gone orange and cracked from decades of sun. The building hunched low against the earth as if trying not to be noticed. A wooden cross rose from the peaked roof, weathered gray as bone, listing slightly to the east, where winter winds had pushed it year after year. Mesquite trees crouched around the mission in twisted ranks, their gnarled limbs offering no real shade, only the illusion of shelter. A dry creek bed snaked past the eastern wall, empty now for 7 years, its stones bleached white as old teeth. Behind the main building sat a small barn roof sagging in the middle, and a chicken coop built from salvaged lumber and hope. The morning air hung still and heavy. No birds sang, no breeze stirred, just silence, the kind that listened back. Sister Ruth Ashford sat on a wooden bench on the mission's front porch. Not a rocking chair, not something soft or forgiving. Just a plain bench she had built herself from mesquite planks, sanded smooth with her own calloused hands. She sat straight, backed feet flat on the worn board spine, not touching the wall behind her. A tin cup of coffee rested beside her on the bench rail. The coffee had gone cold an hour ago. She had poured it at 4:30 that morning and taken exactly 3 sips before setting it down and never touching it again. Her hands held a small Bible Latin text leather cover cracked along the spine, but she was not reading. Her eyes gray as winter sky fixed on the eastern horizon where the sun had just begun its slow climb. She did not blink often. When she did, it was deliberate, like the closing of a door. Sister Ruth was 42 years old, though the desert had a way of adding years that no calendar could count. Her face was lean, sun-darkened, lined at the corners of her eyes, not from smiling, but from squinting against light and distance and things she had learned to see before they saw her. Her hair, what little showed beneath the simple black wimple she wore, had gone more silver than brown. She kept it cropped short beneath the cloth, practical military. She wore a black habit, but not the elaborate kind. No flowing robes, no ornate headdress. Frontier practicality had stripped her uniform down to essentials. A simple black dress that ended at her ankles, sturdy boots beneath a plain wimple that covered her hair and neck. A leather belt cinched her waist, and from it hung a rosary. Not the delicate kind made of glass or precious stones. These beads were carved from mesquite wood, each one shaped by her own knife during long winter nights. The beads had worn smooth from years of prayer, polished by anxious fingers, counting off decades of Ave Marias. Her hands told stories she did not speak. Calloused palms, rough as leather. Nails trimmed short, no vanity in them. Scars ran white across her knuckles. Small burn marks dotted the backs of her fingers. Powder burns from years of loading and firing rifles in all weather. On her left hand, a long scar traced from the base of her thumb to her wrist, pale against tanned skin. Rope burn old as the war itself. Another scar, puckered and round, sat just below her right collarbone, hidden beneath her habit. Exit wound. The bullet had passed clean through at Chancellorsville. She had kept fighting. The sun crept higher, light spilled across the desert, turning everything to gold and shadow. Sister Ruth closed the Bible without marking her place. She stood slow and deliberate, every movement economical. She picked up the cold coffee, walked to the edge of the porch, and poured it into the dirt. A small offering to earth that took everything and gave back only dust. At 5:45, she entered the mission through the heavy oak door. The interior was cool, dim, scented with old incense and beeswax. The main room served as chapel. 6 wooden pews, handmade, lined up before a simple altar. A crucifix hung on the wall behind it, carved from dark wood. Christ's face turned skyward in eternal question. 2 narrow windows covered with oiled paper instead of glass let in filtered light. Sister Ruth walked to the altar, knelt on the worn stone floor. She folded her hands, closed her eyes, and began to pray. Her lips moved, forming Latin words without sound. Pater noster quies in caelis. The prayer was as automatic as breathing. She had said it 10,000 times. Maybe more. She had stopped counting years ago. But even in prayer, her mind stayed alert. Her ears tracked sounds outside. The soft cluck of chickens in their coop. The creak of the barn door swinging in some breeze she could not feel inside. The distant cry of a hawk circling high where thermals lifted it without effort. And then beneath it all, a new sound. Faint. So faint another person would have missed it entirely. But Sister Ruth had spent 3 years of war learning to hear what others could not. Hooves on hard-packed earth. Multiple horses, moving slow, still far out, maybe a mile, but coming this way. She finished her prayer, crossed herself, rose to her feet without hurrying. She walked to the small kitchen area at the back of the chapel where a wood stove sat cold and a water barrel stood in the corner. She filled a clay bowl with water, splashed her face, dried it with a clean cloth. Then she walked outside. The garden waited behind the mission rows of vegetables planted with military precision. Tomatoes staked in perfect lines. Squash spreading across mounded earth. Beans climbing poles arranged in tripods. She had engineered a simple irrigation system using wooden troughs and barrels that collected rainwater from the roof. The system worked. The plants grew. She tended them with the same focused attention she had once given to scouting enemy positions. She knelt in the dirt and began to weed, pulling invaders from around the base of tomato plants. Her hands moved quick and sure, but her ears never stopped listening. The hoofbeats were closer now, half a mile, maybe less. 6 horses. She could tell by the rhythm the way the sound overlapped. 2 of the horses favored their left legs slightly. Lame or just tired, ridden hard recently. Sister Ruth stood, brushed dirt from her hands. She walked to the chicken coop, unlatched the door, scattered feed from a tin bucket. 5 hens clucked and pecked at the ground. She counted them, force of habit. All present. She collected 3 eggs from the nesting boxes, placed them carefully in her apron pocket. Then she walked to the woodpile. An axe leaned against the stack of mesquite logs. She picked it up, tested its weight, then positioned a log on the chopping block. She raised the axe and brought it down in one smooth motion. The log split clean down the middle, 2 halves falling away. She positioned another, raised the axe, and stopped. Her head tilted slightly, just a fraction. The wind had shifted, coming from the north now instead of the east, and on that wind rode new smells. Horse sweat, unwashed wool, tobacco smoke, gun oil. She lowered the axe slowly, set it against the woodpile without a sound. She turned and walked back to the mission steps. Unhurried, boots scuffing soft in the dust. She entered through the back door, moved through the kitchen to the chapel. She knelt before the altar as if simply continuing her morning prayers. But her left hand, hidden by the altar cloth, reached beneath the wooden platform. Her fingers found a small metal latch no bigger than her thumb. She pressed it. A section of floorboard directly under the altar shifted just slightly. Not enough to see unless you knew to look, but enough. Beneath that board lay a cedar chest. She had placed it there 7 years ago, the day she first arrived at this mission. Inside that chest rested things she had sworn never to touch again. A Springfield Model 1861 rifle, 50 rounds of ammunition, a Union Army scout coat, faded blue, still bearing dark stains that soap and prayer had never removed, and a leather journal filled with names and dates written in her own careful hand. She did not open the chest. Not yet. Her hands simply rested on the hidden latch, feeling the cool metal against her palm. She whispered, barely audible even to herself, "Father, I buried her 16 years ago. Please do not make me dig her up." A pause. The wind rattled the oiled paper in the windows. "But if you will it, thy will be done." She removed her hand from the latch, rose to her feet, walked back outside as if nothing had changed. She picked up the tin cup from the porch rail, sat down on the bench, opened her Bible to a random page. Psalms. She did not read the words, just stared at them while her ears mapped the approaching riders. 200 yards out now, 6 men on 6 horses, moving cautiously spread wide. Not in single file like travelers, in a loose formation like men expecting trouble. Sister Ruth turned a page in her Bible, did not look up. The sound of hooves grew louder, closer, until she could hear leather creaking metal, jingling, the low murmur of voices, too distant to make out words. The riders crested the small rise 50 yards from the mission and stopped. She felt their eyes on her, assessing, measuring. She turned another page. One of the horses snorted. Hooves shifted in the dirt. Then a voice, deep and rough as river stones, called out across the distance, "Good morning, sister." She did not respond, turned another page. Let the silence stretch and grow heavy. The voice came again, slightly louder. "I said good morning." Sister Ruth looked up. Her eyes moved across the 6 men with the speed and precision of a surveyor mapping terrain. The assessment took less than 3 seconds. Then her gaze dropped back to her Bible. She spoke, voice soft but carrying clear in the still air. One word. Morning. That was all. She returned to her reading, or the appearance of it. The lead rider was a big man on a bigger horse. He sat tall in the saddle, broad shoulders wrapped in a coat made from bearskin, despite the warming day. Blackbeard hung to his chest, braided in places with small carved beads. A wide-brimmed hat shadowed his face, but she could see his eyes. Dark brown, thoughtful, measuring her the same way she had measured him. Behind him rode 5 others. A massive blond man with a bandaged left wrist swollen and badly set. A thin, nervous-looking man whose fingers drummed constantly on his saddle horn. 2 men who looked like brothers, same hard jaw, same cold stare, riding shoulder to shoulder. And a young man barely more than a boy sitting his horse with the stiff uncertainty of someone not used to this life. The lead rider nudged his horse forward 5 paces. 30 yards separated them now. Sister, we are travelers. Been on the trail 3 weeks. Seeking shelter, maybe water for the horses. We can pay. Sister Ruth closed her Bible, set it carefully on the bench beside her. She stood not fast, not slow. Every movement deliberate as clockwork. She walked down the 3 porch steps into the yard, stopped 20 yards from the riders. Her hands hung loose at her sides. No weapon visible, no threat in her posture. Just a woman standing in dirt facing 6 armed men. Water barrel is by the corral, she said. Take what you need, then ride on. The thin man laughed a sharp, brittle sound. That is it. No Christian charity, no stay for supper. Sister Ruth's gaze shifted to him, held for exactly 3 seconds. The man stopped laughing. Christian charity is for Christians, she said. Men running from something are not here seeking God. They are seeking cover. The lead rider straightened in his saddle. Something changed in his posture. Recognition, maybe, or respect. Hard to tell which. How did you know we are running? He asked. Sister Ruth pointed without looking at the massive blond man. That man's wrist is broken recently, poorly set, needs re-breaking and splinting proper. It happened within the last week, and whoever bound it had no medical training. She shifted her pointing finger to the thin, nervous man. That man has rope burn on his neck, still fresh, still weeping. Someone tried to hang him, or he escaped a noose. Either way, it was recent. Her hand dropped. Her eyes moved to their horses. Your animals favor their left legs. Mountain trail riding steep descents taken too fast. Hooves are worn unevenly. You came from high country in a hurry. She looked back at the leader. And you missed her. You wear a Pinkerton badge under that bearskin coat. I can see the chain. Badge is upside down. Either stolen or worn as trophy. Men do not steal badges unless they have reason to fear the law. Dead silence. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. The massive blond man shifted in his saddle leather, groaning. How in hell did you? The leader raised one hand. The blond man fell silent immediately. You are military trained, the leader said. It was not a question. What branch? Sister Ruth did not answer. Scout, I would wager, he continued. Maybe sharpshooter. You assessed 6 armed men in under 10 seconds and knew exactly what to look for. Sister Ruth's expression did not change. I am a woman of God now. What I was does not matter. It matters if we are about to make a mistake here. The young man, the boy with the uncertain seat, blurted out, Uncle Toby, maybe we should just— Shut up, boy, one of the hard-faced brothers snapped. Sister Ruth's eyes moved to the young man, held there. How old are you, son? The boy swallowed. 20, ma'am. I mean, sister. You have a mother waiting somewhere. No, ma'am, died birthing me. Then do not throw that life away on foolishness. Take water and go on. The leader, the one the boy had called Uncle Toby, dismounted, slow, both hands visible, making no sudden moves. He walked forward 10 paces, stopped. 10 yards now separated them. Sister, I am going to tell me straight out with you. We are not outlaws by choice. There was a fight in a saloon. A man died. It was self-defense, but the dead man was a railroad baron's son. Pinkertons do not care about the truth. They want blood. We need somewhere to winter. This mission has roof and walls. We are asking respectful, like for shelter. And if I say no, Sister Ruth asked, The man was quiet for a long moment. Then we will ask again, less respectful. The other men exchanged glances. Hands drifted toward gun butts. The tension pulled tight as wire. Sister Ruth did not flinch, did not reach for a weapon she did not carry. She simply stared at the big man, gray eyes unblinking. "Mr. Blackwood," she said. The man's eyebrows rose. "How do you know my name?" "The boy called you Uncle Toby. Blackwood is a trapping family name. Your father was Thomas Blackwood, worked the Snake River in the 1840s. You are the oldest son, which makes you Tobias. The King of the Rockies, they call you." A slight smile touched the corner of his mouth. "You know your trappers. I know men, and I know you are not as dangerous as you want me to believe. If you were, you would have taken this place already instead of asking permission." She paused, let that sink in, then her voice dropped lower, quieter, but somehow more dangerous for it. "But I will tell you this once. This mission sits on sacred ground. Apache considered it holy before the Spanish came. Blood spilled here does not wash away. It soaks deep into the earth. Men who have tried to take it by force before." She paused again. "They did not leave." The thin man spoke up, voice cracking slightly. "That a threat, sister? It is history." Tobias Blackwood studied her face for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice had changed. Softer, more careful. "You were at Chattanooga, were you not?" Sister Ruth's left eye twitched, barely noticeable. Just the smallest tell. But Tobias caught it. "I was there too," he said. "Other side. Confederate sharpshooter stationed on the ridge above the valley. We had scout reports about a Union shooter, a woman. They called her the Ghost Shepherd. Said she killed 32 of our men in 3 days. Never missed. Not once." Sister Ruth said nothing. "They said she could shoot a man at 600 yards, Tobias continued. "Put the bullet exactly where she wanted, hard head or just wound if she felt merciful. And she never ever missed." "The Ghost Shepherd died at Appomattox," Sister Ruth said, a voice flat as stone.
I know what
Did
you've
she,
done.
or did
You
she
don't
just change
understand.
clothes?
Then make me
The silence
understand.
that
It's not
followed
that
was
simple.
absolute. No bird called, no wind blew. The world seemed to lean in listening. The massive blond man spoke from his horse. "Toby, what is this about?" Tobias did not look away from Sister Ruth. "It means we are outmatched, Magnus. It means the woman standing in front of us is not what she appears." "She is a woman," Magnus protested. "A nun." "She is a legend," Tobias said quietly. "There is a difference." Sister Ruth took one step backward, then another. Her eyes never left Tobias. "Take water from the barrel by the corral," she said. "Leave by noon. That is my final offer." "And if we do not," Tobias asked, "then you will learn why the Apache called this place where shadows fall." She turned, walked back to the porch with measured steps, climbed the stairs, sat on her bench, picked up her Bible, opened it, did not look at them again. Tobias stood in the yard for another 10 seconds watching her. Then he turned to his men. "Water the horses," he said. "Then we make camp 2 miles north." One of the brothers, the one with the harder eyes, spoke up. "2 miles? Why not take—" "Because I said so, Eli." They watered their horses at the barrel in tense silence. Sister Ruth read her Bible, never looking up, never acknowledging their presence. When they finished, when the last horse had drunk its fill, Tobias tipped his hat toward the porch. She did not respond. They mounted up and rode north, disappearing beyond the ridge in a cloud of dust. When they were gone, when the sound of hooves had faded completely, Sister Ruth closed her Bible. Her hands rocked steady while the men had been there began to shake. Just slightly, just enough to notice. She set the Bible down, stood, walked inside the mission, barred the heavy oak door with a thick beam that fit into iron brackets on either side. Then she moved through the chapel to the altar, knelt, but this time she did not pray. Her hand found the hidden latch again, pressed it. The floorboards shifted. She lifted it completely this time, revealing the cedar chest beneath. She stared down at it for a long time, at the dark wood, at the iron hinges, at everything it represented. Then she lowered the board back into place, stood, walked to the narrow window that faced north. Through the oiled paper, she could see dust still hanging in the air where the riders had passed. She stood there for a long time, watching that dust settle, watching the desert swallow all evidence that 6 men had ever been there. Her lips moved, forming words too quiet to hear. They will come back, tonight or tomorrow or the day after. They will come back, and when they do, I will have to choose. She touched the rosary at her belt, ran her fingers over the smooth mesquite beads. Please, Father, do not make me become her again. But the mission offered no answer. Just cool shadows and the source of old incense and the weight of silence pressing down like a hand. 2 miles north beyond the ridge where red rock rose in jagged teeth against the sky, Blackwood's company made camp in the thin shade of a rock outcropping. They unsaddled horses, hobbled them to graze on sparse yellow grass, built a small fire from dried mesquite branches, made coffee that tasted like dirt and regret. Magnus Holt sat with his back against a boulder, cradling his broken wrist. The pain had not lessened in the weeks since the saloon fight. If anything, it had gotten worse. The bone had set, crooked. Every movement sent fire up his arm. We should take that mission, he said, not for the first time. One woman, 6 of us. It would be easy. Tobias Blackwood poured coffee into a tin cup, did not look up. Nothing about that woman is easy. She is a nun, Toby. She ain't gonna fight back. She is a soldier, Tobias corrected. The habit is just a uniform she wears now. Underneath, she is still what she was. And what she was could kill all 6 of us before we got through that door. Silas Webb, the thin, nervous man, spoke up. His fingers still drummed on his knee, a rhythm he could not seem to stop. You really think she is this ghost shepherd that is just war stories, legends, men exaggerating over whiskey? Tobias finally looked up. I was at Chattanooga, Silas. I was on that ridge. I saw what she did. Saw good men, friends drop dead from shots that came out of nowhere. 600 yards through smoke, thick as soup, and she never missed. Not once. That is not legend. That is skill. And skill like that does not just disappear because you put on a nun's habit. Nathaniel Grayson, older of the 2 brothers, spoke for the first time since they had made camp. So what do we do? Winter is coming. We got maybe a week before the first snow hits this high. We need shelter or we freeze. There is a trading post 30 miles south, Tobias said. 30 miles through mountain passes, Nate countered, with Pinkertons likely watching every road south. We would not make it 10 miles. Elijah Grayson, the younger brother, leaned forward. I say we take the mission. Tonight. She is one woman. I do not care how good she was in the war. That was 16 years ago. She is old now. Probably half blind. We go in fast, get her before she can react. It is over. Tobias was quiet for a long time. He stared into his coffee as if reading something in the dark liquid. Finally, he spoke. When I was 19, I trapped beaver up on the Yellowstone. Winter came early that year. Brutal cold. My partner man named Henry Bridger, he found a grizzly den. Old female, probably past her prime. Henry said we should take her hide while she hibernated. I said no. Henry said I was being foolish, that she was old and slow and half asleep. I said a bear is still a bear no matter how old. Henry did not listen. Went into that den with just a knife. He paused, took a sip of coffee. I buried what was left of him 3 days later. That old bear is missing teeth and half blind, and she still tore Henry apart in about 5 seconds. He looked up at his men. Sister Ruth is that bear. She might be 42. She might be living alone in a mission doing nothing but praying and gardening. But underneath, she is still what she was. And what she was is the most dangerous woman I ever heard of. Magnus spat into the dirt. You are scared of a nun. I am scared of making a stupid mistake and getting us all killed, yes. There is no shame in that. Stupid men die, young Magnus. I aim to live a good, long while yet. Samuel Blackwood, the youngest, had been sitting quiet this whole time. Now he spoke, voice uncertain. Uncle Toby, what if we just asked her, not demanded, asked, explained about the railroad man's son, about it being self-defense, about Pinkertons hunting us. Maybe she would show mercy. Tobias looked at his nephew. The boy was 20, still had soft cheeks, still looked at the world like it might be kind if you just asked nicely. Tobias envied that innocence, even as he knew it would not last. Maybe, Tobias said, but I do not think Sister Ruth is in the mercy business anymore. I think she came out here to get away from people like us. And I think if we push her, she will push back harder than we can handle." They sat in silence after that. The sun climbed higher. The day grew hot. Flies buzzed around the horses. Coffee grew cold in tin cups. Then Eli spoke again, quieter this time. "What if we wait? Wait for her to leave. Everyone leaves eventually. Go to town for supplies. Visit other missions. Something. We wait until she is gone, then move in. By the time she gets back, we are settled. She would not throw us out in the cold then." Tobias considered this, nodded slowly. "That is smarter. We watch, we wait, we see if she gives us an opening. And if she does not," Nate asked, "then we figure something else out. But we do not charge in stupid. We do not underestimate her, and we do not forget what she used to be." Back at the mission, Sister Ruth worked through the afternoon as if nothing had changed. She tended her garden, fed her chickens, split more firewood, made a simple meal of cornbread and beans, and it slowly cleaned her plate with water from the barrel. But every few minutes, her eyes would flick north, toward the ridge, toward where 6 men sat planning whatever they were planning. As the sun began its descent toward the western horizon, painting the desert in shades of gold and blood, she walked around the perimeter of the mission. Not obviously checking, just walking. But her eyes missed nothing. The sand in front of the main door. She had raked it smooth that morning. Any footprint would show clear in moonlight. The chicken coop. The latch was simple, but she had rigged a small bell on the inside. If anyone opened that door at night, she would hear it. The wood pile, stacked against the south wall. Good cover for anyone trying to approach unseen. But she had placed loose branches around the base. Step on those, they would crack loud enough to wake her. The barn. No door, just an open entrance. Nothing inside but old straw and the smell of ancient horses long dead. But the roof was intact. Walls were solid. A man could shelter there. 6 men could. She stood in the barn entrance as the last light faded, looking at the dusty floor, the sagging beams overhead. An idea began to form. Not fully shaped yet, just the seed of something. She walked back to the mission, lit a single candle inside the chapel, knelt before the altar. This time she prayed with words. "Father, I am trying so hard to be better than I was. I buried that life. I thought I had left it behind, but here it is again, standing on my doorstep, demanding I choose." She paused. The candle flame wavered in some draft she could not feel. "If they come in peace, truly in peace, help me see it. Help me offer the mercy I was never shown. But if they come with violence," her voice caught, "if they come with violence, stay my hand. Do not let me become her again. Do not let me add more names to the list of 63. She waited, hoping for some sign, some divine guidance. But there was only silence and candlelight and the slow tick of time passing. Finally she stood, blew out the candle. The chapel plunged into darkness. She did not light another, just moved through the familiar space by memory hands, trailing along pewback's feet, finding the path to her small room at the rear of the building. She lay down on her narrow cot, still dressed, boots still on, did not pull the thin blanket over herself. She stared at the ceiling she could not see and waited for sleep that would not come. Outside, the moon rose, full and bright, turning the desert to silver and shadow. Coyotes called in the distance, their voices rising and falling in eerie chorus. The temperature dropped, as it always did when the sun fled. Within an hour, the air would be cold enough to see breath. And somewhere to the north, 6 men sat around a dying fire making decisions that would change everything. Sister Ruth lay in darkness, listening, always listening. Her hand rested on the rosary at her belt, fingers moving from bead to bead by touch alone. She had learned long ago that the waiting was often worse than the fighting, the anticipation, the not knowing, the question of whether violence could be avoided or if it was as inevitable as sunrise. By midnight, she still had not slept. By 2 in the morning, she gave up trying. She rose, walked back to the chapel, knelt once more before the altar. Her hand found the hidden latch, pressed it. The floorboard shifted. This time she lifted it completely. Looked down at the cedar chest in the thin moonlight that filtered through the oiled paper windows. Her fingers traced the edge of the chest lid, but she did not open it. Not yet, not tonight. But soon she knew. Soon she would have no choice. The ghost shepherd would have to wake up one more time, one last time, and God help them all when she did. The first 3 days passed like a held breath. Sister Ruth kept to her routines with mechanical precision. Morning prayer at dawn, tending the garden, feeding chickens, chopping wood. Evening prayer at dusk. But beneath the surface calm, every nerve stayed wire-tight, every sense tuned to the horizon. Blackwood's company remained camped beyond the ridge. She could see their smoke rising thin and gray against the sky each morning. Could smell it on the wind when it shifted west. They were watching her the same way she watched them. A standoff of patience and will. On the morning of the fourth day, everything changed. Sister Ruth was splitting wood behind the mission when she heard it. Not hoofbeats this time. Footsteps, single set, coming slow and hesitant from the north. She set down her axe without sound, moved to the corner of the building where she could see without being seen. It was the boy, Samuel. Walking alone, no horse hands held out from his sides to show they were empty. He stopped 50 yards from the mission, called out in a voice that cracked slightly. "Sister Ruth, I come alone, no weapons, I just want to talk." She stepped into view, did not speak, just waited. Sam took a few steps closer, stopped again. "Sister, I wanted to thank you, proper-like, for the water, for not shooting us when you could have. You have thanked me. Go back. I also wanted to ask something." He shifted his weight, nervous. "How did you learn to see things the way you do? The broken wrist, the rope burn, all of it. Uncle Toby says you were a scout in the war. That true? What I was does not matter. It matters to me." Sam took another step. "My mama, before she died birthing me, she made my daddy promise I would learn to read. He taught me before he passed. I read a lot. About the war, about scouts and sharpshooters. They say the ghost shepherd could shoot a candle flame at 400 yards without breaking the wick." Sister Ruth was quiet for a long moment. "They exaggerate. Could you do it?" Another pause. Then, almost against her will, the ghost of something that might have been a smile touched her lips. 500 yards. And yes, without breaking the wick. "Now leave me in peace, Sam." She turned to go back inside. Sam's voice stopped her. "Sister, Uncle Toby says we should surrender. Turn ourselves in. Says it is our best chance. But the others, they are scared. Scared they will hang. Would you, I mean, if we did surrender, would you testify? Tell them it was self-defense." Sister Ruth looked back at him. Really looked. Saw a boy trying to be a man, caught up in currents beyond his control, drowning slowly and knowing it. "If you surrender voluntarily," she said, "I will speak truth. That is all I can promise." "Thank you, sister." He turned to leave, then paused. "Sister Ruth, one more thing. Uncle Toby asked me to tell you something. He found out the name of the red-haired boy at Chattanooga, the one you shot." Sister Ruth went very still. "What?" "He sent telegram to Confederate Veterans Bureau, cost him $2. They searched records." Sam pulled a folded paper from his pocket, set it on the ground between them. "That is him. Thought you would want to know." He walked away quickly, not looking back. Sister Ruth stood frozen for a full minute. Then she walked forward, picked up the paper, unfolded it with trembling fingers. Written in rough hand, "Corporal James Michael O'Connor, 14th Tennessee Infantry, age 16, drummer boy." Beneath that, in Tobias Blackwood's handwriting, "Thought you should know his name. We are even now for the water." Sister Ruth's knees went weak. She sat down right there in the dirt, paper clutched in both hands. For 16 years he had been the boy, the red-haired boy, the one who surrendered. Now he had a name, a rank, a regiment, a story. James Michael O'Connor. She whispered it again, again, trying to make it real, trying to fit a name to the face that haunted every night. She did not notice she was crying until the tears fell on the paper, blurring the ink. That night, after evening prayer, after the sun had bled out across the western sky and left the world in twilight, Tobias Blackwood approached the mission alone. He came on foot, both hands visible, carrying no weapon. He
I
stopped
know
30
what you've
yards from the
done.
porch where
You
Sister
don't
Ruth sat
understand.
with her
Then
Bible.
make me understand.
"Sister,"
It's not
he
that
called.
simple.
"I mean no harm. I come to talk." She closed her Bible, set it aside, did not invite him closer. Tobias stayed where he was. "Got your thanks through Sam for the name. You are welcome." "Why did you do it?" Sister Ruth asked. The telegram costs money you do not have. Why spend it on me? Because I know what it is to carry ghosts. Tobias's voice was quiet, almost lost in the evening wind. I had a friend, best friend, man named Henry Bridger. He was killed in the war. Union sniper. Single shot 600 yards through smoke so thick you could not see your hand in front of your face. I always wondered who fired that shot. Sister Ruth said nothing. He wore a red bandana his wife made him, Tobias continued. Tall man, blonde beard. I held him while he died. He asked me to tell his wife and daughter he loved them. I did after the war. His daughter's name is Clara. She is 20 now. Married, has a son. When did he die? Sister Ruth asked, though part of her already knew. May 5th, 1864. The Wilderness, around 3:47 in the afternoon. Sister Ruth closed her eyes. I remember. Confederate officer with red bandana rallying troops on the Orange Turnpike. I was prone on the ridge north of the road. I fired. He fell. I did not know he had a wife, a daughter. I just saw the uniform. The silence that followed was heavy as stone. I am sorry, Sister Ruth said finally. I took your friend. I took Clara's father. I cannot give him back. War took him, Tobias said. You were just the bullet. There is a difference. Is there? I think so. I have to believe so. Otherwise, what was any of it for? They stood there in the growing darkness, two people who had fought on opposite sides of a war that had ended 16 years ago, but somehow never really stopped. The bullets had quit flying, the armies had disbanded, but the damage remained working itself through lives like slow poison. You know the worst part, Tobias said. If we had met different time, different sides, I think we could have been friends. We met in blood, Mr. Blackwood. Friends do not grow from that soil. Maybe not friends, but something, respect at least. Respect I can manage. Tobias nodded, started to turn away, then stopped. Sister Ruth, I need to tell you something. My men are getting desperate. Winter is coming fast. Temperature dropped near freezing last night. In 3 days, maybe 4, the first real storm hits. I can smell it on the wind. When that storm comes, my men will not stay in open camp. They will come here, and I do not know if I can stop them. Then do not be here when they come. We have nowhere else to go. Pinkertons are watching every road south. We ride out of these mountains, we are dead men. Sister Ruth was quiet for a long time. Then she spoke, and her voice carried a weight of decision made against every instinct. There is a barn, 200 yards behind the mission. Adobe walls roof with some holes, but mostly intact. No door, no heat, but it is better than freezing. Tobias stared at her. You would let us shelter there. I would let you survive the storm, nothing more. The mission itself is off limits. Sacred ground. You set one foot inside again, the offer is void, and you will answer for it. Understood. Understood. And when the first thaw comes, you ride out. You surrender yourselves to proper law in Prescott. Let a judge hear your case. No more running. You want us to turn ourselves in. I want you to live. Running will get you killed, so will freezing. Surrender is your only chance. Tobias considered this, finally nodded. I will talk to my men, but I cannot promise they will agree. Then do not bring the ones who disagree. Tobias tipped his hat, walked back into darkness. Sister Ruth sat on her porch long after he was gone, staring at nothing, wondering if she had just made the biggest mistake of her life or the first right choice in 16 years. 2 days later, the storm everyone had been waiting for arrived with the fury of something long held back. The sky went black at noon. Wind came howling out of the north, carrying the smell of snow and ice in the high, lonesome places where winter lived year-round. Temperature dropped 30 degrees in an hour. By evening, the first snow began to fall. Thick, heavy flakes that came down in curtains, piling up fast on the mission roof, on the barn, on the bare ground that had not seen snow in 7 years. Blackwood's company huddled in the barn, wrapped in every piece of clothing they owned. The horses stood pressed together for warmth, breath steaming in the frigid air. The men had built a small fire outside the barn entrance, but the wind kept killing it. They would get it going, coax it to life, and then a gust would sweep through and scatter the flames like dreams. Magnus Holt sat with his back against the barn wall, shivering so hard his teeth rattled. His broken wrist throbbed with cold. "We are going to die here," he said through blue lips. "That nun is sitting warm in her mission while we freeze." "We gave our word," Tobias said, though his own voice shook with cold. "Damn our word. I did not come this far to freeze to death because of some promise to a woman who probably wants us dead anyway." Eli Grayson nodded. "Magnus is right. We need real shelter, real heat. That mission has a fireplace, food, walls that actually keep out wind." Sam spoke up, voice small. "Uncle Toby, maybe, if we asked again, explained how bad it is." "She was clear," Tobias said. "The mission is off limits." "Then she can watch us die," Magnus snarled. He struggled to his feet. "I am going. Anyone with sense comes with me. Anyone wants to freeze can stay here with Toby and his precious honor." Eli stood, then Silas, then Nate, though he moved slowly, his injured ankle still weak. Tobias looked at them. "You do this, you break faith with the only person who has shown us mercy." "I will take broken faith over a frozen corpse," Magnus said. He pushed out of the barn into the howling storm. The others followed. Tobias grabbed Sam's arm as the boy started to rise. "Stay here." "But Uncle Toby, I said stay." Tobias stood in the barn entrance, watching four men stumble through knee-deep snow toward the mission. His hand rested on the pistol at his hip. Every instinct screamed at him to stop them. But part of him, the cold, desperate part, understood why they were going. Inside the mission, Sister Ruth sat in the chapel watching shadows dance on the wall from the single candle burning before the altar. She wore her habit but had wrapped herself in a wool blanket as well. The thick adobe walls kept out most of the cold, but not all. The small fire in the hearth had burned down to coals. She heard them coming before they reached the door. Heavy footsteps crunching through snow, labored breathing, the muffled curses of men pushed beyond endurance. She stood, walked to the altar, knelt, and this time she did not hesitate. She pressed the hidden latch, lifted the floorboard, opened the cedar chest. The Springfield rifle came out first. Cold metal, familiar weight. She checked the action by feel in the dim light. Smooth, perfect, always ready. She had maintained it, even though she had sworn never to fire it again. Old habits. She loaded it. Powder ball percussion cap. The movement's automatic as breathing. Muscle memory from thousands of repetitions. Then she took out the coat. The Union Scout coat. Faded blue wool, dark stains on the right shoulder that had never washed clean. She pulled it on over her habit. It still fit. The knock came hard and demanding. "Sister Ruth, open up. We are freezing." She walked to the door, did not open it. "You gave your word. The barn was the agreement." Magnus's voice raw with desperation. "The barn is going to be our coffin. We need real shelter. Then ride south to the trading post. We will die before we make 5 miles." Eli's voice joined in. "Sister, please, Christian, mercy." Sister Ruth stood with her back to the door, a rifle in her hands, torn between everything she had sworn to become and everything she used to be. "Step back from the door," she said. "All of you." 20 paces. She heard the move, counted to 10. Then she unbarred the door and stepped out into the storm. The wind hit her like a fist. Snow stung her face, turned the world to white chaos. But she could see them. 4 men standing in the yard, desperate, half-frozen on the edge of doing something stupid. She brought the rifle to her shoulder, aimed at Magnus. "I offered you shelter. You accepted those terms. Breaking faith is the gravest sin." Magnus took 1 step forward. "Then shoot me, because I am coming in either way." Sister Ruth's finger rested on the trigger. 3 pounds of pressure. That was all. 3 pounds and Magnus would drop, and the others would scatter, and everything would end the way it always ended. In blood and gun smoke, and names added to the list. Then a figure stumbled between them. Tobias Blackwood, coatless, shaking violently, hair and beard white with snow. "Magnus, stand down." Everyone froze. Tobias turned to Sister Ruth. "I am asking, man to man, soldier to soldier, please let them inside, just until the storm passes. They broke faith. They are desperate. Desperation makes fools of good men. I am begging. I warned you. I know, and I am not asking you to compromise. I am asking you to show the mercy you wish someone had shown those 63 men before you killed them." The words hit like a slap. Sister Ruth flinched, physically recoiled as if struck. The silence stretched. Wind howled. Snow fell in thick curtains. Finally, Sister Ruth lowered the rifle. The chapel is sacred, but there is a cellar. Under the kitchen, stone walls, low ceiling, 12 feet by 8, no windows. It was used to store food before I came here. It is cramped. It is dark, but the earth keeps it warm. She paused. Let them absorb this. You can shelter there. No weapons. I hold them until the storm passes. You try anything, I seal the door and you suffocate. Understood. Magnus, teeth chattering, nodded. Understood. Lay your weapons on the ground, now. They did. Rifles, pistols, knives, a pile in the snow already being covered by freshfall. Sam, Sister Ruth called. Help Nate. Sam emerged from the barn, helped his Uncle Nate limp through the snow. All 6 men gathered, shivering, waiting. Sister Ruth led them inside. Through the chapel, through the small kitchen. To a door in the floor she opened with an iron ring. Stone steps descended into darkness. Down. They descended single file. Sister Ruth followed with the candle. The cellar was exactly as described. Small, cramped dirt floor, stone walls, but noticeably warmer than outside. The earth insulated. She brought blankets from her own bed, a canteen of water, dried meat and hardtack, set them on the floor without entering the cellar herself. I will check every 4 hours. Storm should pass by tomorrow afternoon. Endure. What about a fire? Magnus asked. Fire in a confined space kills faster than cold. You have blankets and body heat. Endure. She climbed back up, closed the door, dropped the bar across it. They were locked in. She gathered their weapons from the snow, brought them inside, leaned them in the corner of the chapel. Then she sat before the altar, still wearing the coat rifle across her lap, and waited. The hours crawled past like wounded things. Every 4 hours she opened the cellar door, checked on them, brought more water, more food, made sure none had died of cold. At the second check around 2 in the morning, Nate's voice came from the darkness. Sister, yes, thank you for this. You could have let us freeze, could have shot Magnus. You chose mercy instead. Thank God, not me. Did he choose or did you? Sister Ruth had no answer for that. At the 4th check around 10 in the morning, she found Tobias awake while the others slept. He climbed the stairs, spoke quietly. How are you doing, Ruth? You look half frozen yourself. She was. She had given them her blankets. The fire had died hours ago. She had not left the chapel, had not slept, had just sat with the rifle waiting for something to go wrong. I am fine. You are a terrible liar. He studied her face in the candlelight. You know, I have been thinking about Henry, about your red-haired boy, James O'Connor, about all the men we killed who probably had mothers and wives and children waiting. We did not think about that during the war, could not afford to. But now, sitting in that cellar listening to Magnus and the others breathing, I keep thinking, what if someone had shown us mercy? What if someone had chosen not to pull the trigger? The war would have lasted longer. Maybe, or maybe it would have ended different. Better. I do not know. He paused. But I know this. What you are doing now, showing us mercy when you have every right to let us die, that matters more than what you did 16 years ago. Sister Ruth wanted to believe him. God, how she wanted to believe him. At noon, the storm began to break. The wind died to a whisper. The snow stopped falling. Pale sunlight filtered through the clouds, turning the white world to blinding brilliance. Sister Ruth opened the cellar door. Storm has passed. You can come up. They climbed out one by one, stiff and cold, but alive. She returned their weapons without comment. They stood in awkward silence, not quite prisoners, not quite guests, something in between. Finally, Tobias spoke. What happens now? Before Sister Ruth could answer, Sam, who had walked to the window, called out in a voice tight with fear. Riders coming, 3 of them, from the south. Everyone went still. Sister Ruth moved to the window, looked out. 3 men on horseback picking their way through snow. Even from a distance, she could see the glint of badges. Pinkertons. Tobias was beside her now, face gone pale. If they find us here, get back in the cellar. Now, all of you. Ruth. Now. They scrambled back down the stairs. Sister Ruth closed the door, threw the bar, shrugged out of the blue coat, stuffed it under her bed, smoothed her habit, took 3 deep breaths. Then she opened the mission door and stepped out onto the porch, a lone face composed, a woman of God, with nothing to hide. The 3 Pinkertons reined in 30 feet from the mission. The lead agent was a grizzled man in his 50s, cold eyes above a gray beard. He touched his hat brim. "Afternoon, sister. I am Agent Frank Dalton, Pinkerton National Detective Agency. This here is Agent William Hayes and Agent Robert Chen. We are tracking 6 fugitives, wondering if you have seen any strangers pass through." Sister Ruth folded her hands in front of her. "I have seen many strangers, Agent. This is mission land. Travelers come seeking water and blessing. These particular strangers are wanted for murder. Railroad executive's son died in a saloon fight. 6 men fled. We have good reason to believe they are in these mountains." "I see." Dalton studied her face. "You have not answered my question, sister. Have you seen them?" Sister Ruth chose her words carefully. "Men matching such description came through several days ago, took water from my barrel, rode west toward California. It was not quite a lie. They had taken water, but the direction was pure fiction." Agent Hayes, younger and eager, spoke up. "Sister, those tracks around your corral are fresh, within the last day. My mule. 6 different sizes, sister. 6 different horses. Then my mule has interesting friends." Dalton's eyes narrowed. "Sister, you are impeding a federal investigation. I am protecting sanctuary. There is a difference." Agent Chen, who had been quiet until now, leaned forward in his saddle. He was Chinese unusual for a Pinkerton agent,
I
and his
know
eyes
what
were
you've done.
sharp and thoughtful.
You don't understand.
"Sister,
Then
those
make me
scars on your
understand.
hands,
It's not that simple.
rope burns, powder burns. You served in the war." Sister Ruth's jaw tightened slightly. "Many served." "What branch?" "That is personal." "I was at Chattanooga," Chen said quietly. "Saw Union scouts work. One woman, they said, best sharpshooter anyone had ever seen. They called her the Ghost Shepherd." Dalton's eyes went wide. "Sweet Jesus, you are her." Sister Ruth said nothing, but her silence was answer enough. "I will be damned," Dalton breathed. "The Ghost Shepherd wearing a habit. Boys, we are in the presence of a genuine legend." Hayes looked confused. "Sir, what are you talking about?" "This woman killed more Confederates than yellow fever Hayes. Put 63 men in the ground with 63 shots, never missed. Not once. If she says those men rode west, then by God they rode west." But Chen was still studying Sister Ruth's face. "Sister, with respect, I do not think you are telling us the whole truth. With respect, Agent Chen, I do not answer to you. I answer to God. And God told you to lie to federal agents. God told me to show mercy. What you do with that is between you and him." Dalton stared at her for a long moment. Then he turned his horse. "We will be back, sister, with proper warrant to search this mission. If those men are here, we will find them. Then I will see you when you return." The Pinkertons rode away, disappearing over the ridge. Sister Ruth stood on the porch until they were completely out of sight. Then her knees buckled. She sat down hard on the steps, heart hammering, hands shaking. She had just lied. Not misdirected, not omitted. Lied outright to federal agents. A nun lying. Breaking one commandment to uphold another. Protecting fugitives. Obstructing justice. She put her face in her hands and tried to decide if she had just damned herself. Behind her, the mission door opened. Tobias emerged, moved slowly to sit beside her on the steps. Not too close, respectful of space, but close enough to talk quietly. "You lied for us." "I misdirected." "You lied. To law enforcement. And you are a nun. You are not supposed to lie." Sister Ruth lifted her head, looked at him. "I am trying to save your lives, even if it costs my soul. Why, we are nothing to you. Less than nothing. We came here to take your home." She was quiet for a long time. When she spoke, her voice was barely audible. "Because I have killed 63 people. I can name them. I see their faces every night. I joined this order, came to this mission trying to atone, trying to balance the scales just at a fraction. If I let you die when I could save you, if I let the Pinkertons hang you when there is any chance for mercy, then those 63 deaths mean nothing. I become just a killer in different clothes." Tobias absorbed this. So you save us to save yourself. Maybe, or maybe I save you because it is the right thing to do, and I have done so many wrong things that I have forgotten what right feels like. They sat in silence watching the sun break through clouds, turning the snow-covered desert to fields of diamonds. Finally, Tobias spoke. We will surrender. Tomorrow. We will ride to Prescott, turn ourselves in. You can come with us, testify about what happened, about the railroad man's son starting the fight. Maybe we get a fair trial. Maybe we hang. But at least we stop running. Sister Ruth looked at him, surprised. You would do that? You risked everything for us. Your vows, your peace, maybe your soul. The least we can do is trust that you are right. That mercy is better than running. Your men will agree. They will, or they will ride out alone. But Sam and I, we will surrender. And I think the others will follow. Sister Ruth nodded slowly. Then I will ride with you. I will tell the truth. What happens after that is up to God and 12 honest men. Thank you, Sister Ruth. Do not thank me yet. We might all be making the biggest mistake of our lives. Maybe. But at least it will be an honest mistake. They sat together on the steps as the sun climbed higher and the snow began to melt, and somewhere in the distance, a hawk cried out sharp and lonely and free. 3 days after the storm, Sister Ruth saddled her mule Benedict for the first time in 2 years. The animal protested, braying and shifting as she cinched the girth but eventually settled under her firm hands. Tobias and his men prepared their own horses in silence, checking cinches, adjusting stirrups, the small rituals of men about to ride into uncertain fate. The morning was cold and clear. The sky a pale blue washed clean by the storm. Snow still clung to shaded places, but the sun was already doing its work, turning white to water, water to mud. By afternoon, the trails would be passable. Magnus Holt broke the silence as he mounted his horse, favoring his broken wrist. This is foolish. We are riding straight into a noose. We are riding into a courthouse, Tobias corrected. There is a difference. Not much of one. Then ride away, Magnus. No one is forcing you. Magnus sat his horse jaw, working anger and fear warring in his face. Finally, he spat into the dirt. I have come this far with you bastards. Might as well see it through. Sam rode close to Sister Ruth as they started down the mountain trail. Sister, are you scared? Of what? Of what they might do to us. To you for helping us. Sister Ruth considered this. I am more afraid of what happens if I do nothing. Fear of action is just another kind of cowardice. They rode in single file, Tobias leading Sister Ruth near the back. The trail wound down through pine forests still heavy with snow, then out onto open slopes where the wind had scoured the ground bare. Twice they saw riders in the distance, too far to identify, and each time Tobias signaled a halt until the strangers passed. By late afternoon, they reached the outskirts of Prescott. The territorial capital spread across a high valley, wood buildings and dirt streets, the smell of wood smoke and horses and civilization. People on the boardwalk stopped to stare at the strange procession. A nun and 6 rough-looking men riding slow and deliberate toward the courthouse. The Pinkerton office was a small building near the center of town, unidentified only by a discreet sign. Tobias dismounted, first handed his reins to Sam, and walked inside alone. The others waited in tense silence. 5 minutes later, Tobias emerged with Agent Dalton and 4 other Pinkertons, all armed, all wary. Dalton's eyes went wide when he saw Sister Ruth. Sister, did not expect to see you here. I came to ensure these men receive fair treatment. They are fugitives. They receive what the law allows. Then let the law decide, not a rope in the dark. Dalton studied her face, then nodded slowly. Fair enough. Boys, take them into custody. Gently now. They surrendered peaceful. We treat them decent. The Pinkertons moved in, removing weapons, applying manacles to wrists. Magnus cursed under his breath, but did not resist. Sam looked terrified, young face gone pale. Tobias stood straight-backed, accepting the chains with quiet dignity. Sister Ruth, Dalton said as his men led the prisoners toward the courthouse jail. A word. She dismounted, followed him a short distance from the others. You lied to me 3 days ago, Dalton said quietly. Told me they rode west. They were in your mission the whole time. They were sheltering from the storm. I offered Christian charity. You obstructed a federal investigation. I prevented bloodshed. If you had found them at the mission, someone would have died. Possibly you, possibly them. Possibly me. This way, everyone lives to see justice done proper. Dalton was quiet for a moment. Then surprisingly, he smiled. Small, grudging, but genuine. You know what, sister, I cannot decide if you are the bravest woman I ever met or the most foolish. Perhaps both. Perhaps. He tipped his hat. They will get a fair trial. I promise you that. But I cannot promise the outcome. That is all I ask. The trial began 2 weeks later. The courthouse was packed, standing room only, curious townspeople and reporters crowding every available space. News of the Ghost Shepherd's return had spread like wildfire. Half the crowd came to see the legendary sharpshooter, the other half to witness the trial of men who had killed a railroad baron's son. Judge Harrison Wyatt presided, a stern man in his 60s with iron gray hair and a reputation for fairness. The prosecution was led by District Attorney Charles Morton Young, and ambitious, seeing this case as his path to higher office. The defense fell to a court-appointed lawyer named Benjamin Moss, overworked and underpaid, doing his best with limited resources. Sister Ruth sat in the front row of the gallery, hands folded over the Bible in her lap, watching as they brought the prisoners in. Tobias Magnus, Silas, Nate, Eli, and Sam, all in chains, all looking smaller, somehow, in the formal setting of the courtroom. Morton stood for his opening statement, voice ringing with practiced outrage. Gentlemen of the jury, the facts of this case are simple and damning. On the night of September 14th, these 6 men murdered Jonathan Ashby, the third son of railroad executive Jonathan Ashby II. They killed him in cold blood over a trivial dispute, then fled like cowards into the mountains. They are killers, and killers must hang. Benjamin Moss stood for the defense, looking tired but determined. Gentlemen, what the prosecution calls murder, I call self-defense. What they call cowardice, I call survival. These men are not angels, but neither are they demons. They are human beings who made a terrible mistake in a moment of fear and desperation, and they deserve the chance to tell their story. The prosecution called witnesses first: the saloon keeper who saw the fight, 2 patrons who witnessed the confrontation. All told the same basic story. Jonathan Ashby had been drinking heavily. He had started an argument with Sam Blackwood, making racist remarks about Sam's Apache heritage. Tobias had intervened. Ashby had drawn a knife. There was pushing, shoving, and then Ashby fell, struck his head on the bar rail, and died. But Morton spun it differently in his questioning. So Mr. Blackwood, a man twice the size of the victim, pushed him. Yes, but pushed him hard enough to kill him. It was the way he fell, sir. Hit his head just wrong. I see, so Mr. Blackwood's violent action directly resulted in death. That sounds like manslaughter at minimum. Murder at worst. Moss tried to counter on cross-examination, but the damage was done. The jury looked skeptical, unmoved. Then the defense called their witnesses. Sam testified first, a young voice shaking but honest. Mr. Ashby called me a dirty Indian, a half-breed, said I did not belong in a white man's saloon. Spit on me, threw a bottle that cut my head open. I still have the scar. Uncle Toby was protecting me. He did not mean to kill anyone. Morton tore into him on cross. So your uncle, in protecting you from words, committed murder. It was not just words, sir. It was violence. A thrown bottle versus a killing blow, hardly equivalent. When Tobias took the stand, he told his story plain and simple. I served in the Confederate Army, lost everything after the war, became a trapper to survive. That night I was protecting my nephew from a drunk bully. I pushed Ashby away. He fell wrong. It was an accident. But he was a rich man's son and we were nobody. So we ran because we knew no jury would see it fair. And yet, Morton said smoothly, here you are, asking this jury to see it fair. After you ran, after you hid, after you wasted the court's time and resources hunting you down. Yes, sir, because a nun convinced me that mercy was possible, that justice could be fair. I hope she was right. Then Benjamin Moss called Sister Ruth to the stand. She walked to the witness box in her black habit, rosary at her belt, Bible in her hands. Every eye in the courtroom followed her. The bailiff swore her in. State your name and occupation for the record, Moss said. Sister Mary Ruth Ashford, Franciscan Nun, Mission Santa Margarita. And how do you know the defendants? They came to my mission seeking shelter. I provided water and later refuge from a winter storm. Did you know they were fugitives? I learned this after they arrived, yes. Yet you did not report them to authorities. I encouraged them to surrender voluntarily. They did. Morton leapt to his feet. Your Honor, may I question the witness? You will have your chance on cross-examination, Mr. Morton. Sit down. Moss continued. Sister Ruth, you are a woman of God, a woman dedicated to peace, yet you chose to help these men. Why back? Sister Ruth took a breath. This was the moment. The truth she had been avoiding for 16 years was about to become public record. Because I understand what it is to kill someone and have to live with that. I served in the Civil War as a Union scout and sharpshooter. I killed 63 Confederate soldiers. I was good at it. Very good. After the war, I could not reconcile what I had done with what I believed. So I joined a religious order seeking atonement. When these men came to my mission, I saw a chance to save lives instead of taking them, to show mercy instead of judgment. The courtroom erupted in whispers. The judge banged his gavel. Order in this court. Moss waited for quiet. Sister Ruth, in your military opinion, was the death of Jonathan Ashby murder or self-defense? Objection, Morton shouted. The witness is not a legal expert. Sustained, the judge said. Rephrase, Mr. Moss. Sister Ruth, based on your experience in combat situations, was the defendant's response to the threat posed by Mr. Ashby proportional? Sister Ruth chose her words carefully. From a tactical standpoint, when a man draws a weapon in close quarters, the appropriate response is immediate defensive action. Mr. Blackwood pushed Mr. Ashby away from his nephew. That is a defensive move, not an offensive one. The death was a consequence of how Mr. Ashby fell, not the intent of Mr. Blackwood's action. Thank you, sister. No further questions. Morton stood slowly, a predator's smile on his face. Sister Ruth, you testified that you killed 63 men in the war. 63. That is quite a number. Yes, sir. Were all those kills in battle in the heat of combat? Most were. Most, but not all. Sister Ruth's jaw tightened. Some were targeted eliminations. Officers, couriers, sentries, tactical necessities. Tactical necessities, Morton repeated, voice dripping with disdain. So you are a killer, sister. A trained killer. And you expect this jury to believe that a woman who has killed 63 men is now suddenly concerned with mercy and justice? I expect this jury to understand that killing haunts the killer, that I live every day with the weight of those deaths, that I see their faces, know their names when I can learn them, and that I became a nun precisely because I do not want one more death on my conscience if it can be avoided. Noble words, but the fact remains you are a killer posing as a holy woman. No, sir. Sister Ruth's voice was steady, clear, carrying to every corner of the courtroom. I am a killer trying to become a holy woman. There is a difference, and these men deserve the same chance I had, the chance to be better than their worst moment. Morton opened his mouth to respond, then closed it. He had no rebuttal to that. He sat down. The judge called for closing arguments. Morton went first, painting the defendants as violent criminals who deserved the full weight of the law. Moss countered with a plea for understanding, for seeing the humanity in men who had made a terrible mistake but were trying to make it right. The jury deliberated for 2 days. The courtroom remained packed the entire time, people waiting for the verdict like it was theater. Sister Ruth sat in the same spot, Bible open, praying silently. When the jury returned, the foreman stood. We find the defendants guilty of involuntary manslaughter, not murder. A collective gasp went through the room. Guilty, but not of murder. That meant prison, not the noose. Judge Wyatt addressed the defendants.
I know what you've done.
Mr. Blackwood,
You
you
don't
and your
understand.
companions
Then
have been
make
found
me
guilty
understand.
of
It's not that
causing the
simple.
death of Jonathan Ashby III through reckless action. However, the jury has also found mitigating circumstances. Self-defense, provocation, and most importantly, your voluntary surrender and obvious remorse. Therefore, I sentence you as follows. He read from a paper. Tobias Blackwood, 3 years in territorial prison. Magnus Holt, Silas Webb, Nathaniel Grayson, and Elijah Grayson, 2 years each. Samuel Blackwood, time already served pending trial, plus 5 years probation. The courtroom erupted. Some cheered, some booed. Sister Ruth closed her eyes and whispered a prayer of thanks. As they led the prisoners away, Sam turned and looked back at her. Mouthed 2 words, thank you. She nodded. That was all, but it was enough. After the trial, Sister Ruth remained in Prescott for 3 days, staying at the Franciscan convent. There a guest of the sisters who ran the local school. On the third day, Agent Dalton found her in the convent garden, kneeling among the herb beds pulling weeds. "Sister Ruth, mind if I join you?" She gestured to the ground beside her. He knelt awkward in his suit and helped pull weeds in silence for a few minutes. "That was quite a testimony," he said finally. 63 kills. I knew you were a legend, but hearing you say it plain like that took guts. It took necessity. Those men needed someone to speak for them who understood both sides, the violence and the cost of it. You saved their lives. You know that, right? If they had been convicted of murder, Judge Wyatt would have hanged them. Your testimony made the jury see them as human. I told the truth. What the jury did with it was their choice. Dalton pulled another weed, examined it. "Can I ask you something personal?" "Like, you can ask. Do you ever regret it, becoming a nun? Giving up that life of action and purpose, and well-being someone important?" Sister Ruth was quiet for a long time. "I was important in the war, but I was important because I could kill people efficiently. That is not the kind of importance I want anymore. Out here at the mission, I am nobody. Just a woman growing vegetables and praying. And that Agent Dalton is the most important I have ever felt." He smiled at that. "You are a strange woman, Sister Ruth." "So I have been told." He stood, dusted off his knees. "Be safe riding back to the mission. And sister, if you ever need anything, you send word. You earned friends in this town. Use them." She returned to Mission Santa Margarita a week later, riding Benedict through familiar landscape that looked unchanged and yet somehow different. The mission stood as it always had, solid and patient, waiting. She unsaddled the mule, fed the chickens, checked her garden. Everything in its place. Everything as it should be. But she felt different inside, like something had shifted and could not shift back. That night, she knelt before the altar and opened the Bible to where she kept 2 pieces of paper. The first was the note from Tobias with James Michael O'Connor's name. The second was a letter that had arrived at the convent in Prescott, forwarded from somewhere back east. She unfolded it, read it again by candlelight. "Dear Sister Ruth, my name is Martha O'Connor Pritchard. I am the sister of James Michael O'Connor, who died at Chattanooga in 1863. A man named Tobias Blackwood wrote to me explaining how my brother died. He told me that the woman who shot him had been carrying his name in her heart for 16 years. He told me you became a nun to atone. I write to tell you this, I forgive you. My mother, before she died, forgave you. James would have forgiven you. The war made killers of good people. You were a soldier following orders. You did not know he was a drummer boy, a child. You did not know he had a mother and sister who loved him. But you have lived with that guilt long enough. It is time to forgive yourself. My brother died brave. He died quick. And the woman who shot him became someone who saves lives now instead of taking them. That is all anyone can ask. May God grant you peace. Martha O'Connor Pritchard." Sister Ruth's hands shook as she folded the letter. She placed it back in the Bible next to James's name. Then she took out the blue scout coat from under her bed, walked outside under the stars, dug a small hole behind the mission near where she had buried the spent bullets weeks before. She placed the coat in the hole, covered it with earth, patted the soil smooth, whispered, "Goodbye, Ghost Shepherd. Rest now." She walked back inside, washed her hands, and slept through the night without dreams for the first time in 16 years. The years that followed were quiet. Sister Ruth returned to her routines, her garden, her prayers. Travelers came and went. She offered water and blessing to all who asked. Some knew who she was, the legend she had been. Most did not. She preferred it that way. 3 years later, on a warm spring day, a man rode up to the mission. Tall, broad-shouldered beard shot through with more gray than black. He dismounted slowly like a man who had learned patience the hard way. Sister Ruth stepped onto the porch, recognized him immediately. "Mr. Blackwood?" "Sister Ruth." Tobias removed his hat. "I was released last month. Good behavior. Came to say thank you proper. And to bring you news." "What news?" "Sam got married. Girl from Flagstaff. He learned carpentry in prison, helped build the new courthouse there. Got himself a real trade now. Building things instead of breaking them. He wanted you to know." Sister Ruth smiled, a real smile, warm and genuine. That is good news. I'm glad for him. The others, well, Magnus died in prison. Infection in his wrist finally killed him. Eli got in a knife fight, did not make it. But Nate and Silas, they got out. Bought a small ranch up in Montana, running cattle. Honest work. And you? I am a guide now. Take rich folks from back east on hunting trips. Show them the mountains, teach them to respect the land. It is good work. Peaceful. I am glad, Mr. Blackwood. He shifted his weight. I also wanted to tell you I found James O'Connor's sister, Martha. She wrote to you, I heard. She did. She asked me to tell you if I saw you that her son is named James, after her brother. She says she tells him stories about his uncle, the brave boy who played drums for the army. She does not tell him about how he died, just that he was loved. Sister Ruth's eyes filled. Thank you for telling me. Tobias nodded, put his hat back on. I will leave you to your peace, sister. But if you ever need anything, you send word. Sam and me, we owe you our lives. That is a debt that does not expire. You owe me nothing, Mr. Blackwood. We are even. Go in peace. He mounted his horse, paused. Sister Ruth, you saved us. Not just from hanging, you saved us from becoming the kind of men who would deserve hanging. That is a greater gift than you know. He rode away. Sister Ruth watched until he was just a speck against the horizon, then nothing at all. 25 years later, on a cold November morning in 1908, an old man walked into a saloon in Prescott. Jacob Mercer was 72, a retired Texas Ranger with a weathered face and kind eyes. He ordered whiskey, sat in the corner booth, and waited. 10 minutes later, a boy walked in, 16 tall and gangly, wearing a new Ranger badge on his chest. The boy looked around nervously, spotted the old man, walked over. Grandpa Jake, Pa said you wanted to see me before I left for training. Sit down, Daniel. I need to tell you a story. The boy sat. Jacob poured him a small whiskey, ignored his grandson's surprised look. You are about to become a Texas Ranger, Jacob said. About to carry a gun with the law behind it. About to have the power to take life legally. Before you do that, you need to understand something. The gun does not make you strong. The badge does not make you righteous. What makes you a good lawman is knowing when not to use that gun, when to show mercy instead of justice. I do not understand, Grandpa. You will. Let me tell you about a woman I met 30 years ago, a nun named Sister Ruth. She was the most dangerous person I ever encountered, and the bravest. Jacob told the story, all of it. The ghost shepherd, the 63 kills, the mission, Blackwood's company, the surrender, the trial, the mercy that changed lives. Daniel listened, eyes growing wide. When Jacob finished, the boy was quiet for a long time. Is she still alive? He asked finally. Jacob shook his head. Died last year, 1907. Found her in her chapel, kneeling at prayer rosary in her hands. Peaceful end for a woman who had seen so much violence. Did you go to the funeral? I did. Half of Prescott turned out. Sam Blackwood, the boy from the story he paid for everything. Big service, lots of tears. They buried her behind the mission she loved. Simple marker, just her name and the dates, and one line, she chose mercy. Daniel absorbed this. Grandpa, why are you telling me this? Because you are young, because you will be scared in your first real confrontation, because your instinct will be to draw that gun and prove you are tough. And I need you to remember, Sister Ruth, remember that the strongest thing you can do is choose not to kill when you have the power to kill. The gun makes killing easy. It is mercy that is hard. Yes, sir. They finished their whiskey, stood, shook hands. Daniel left for his training. Jacob sat alone for a while longer, remembering a spring day in 1881 when he had stopped at a mission for water and met a legend in a nun's habit. In the present, in 1908, Mission Santa Margarita had a new caretaker. Sister Margaret was 35, earnest and kind, with a smile that came easy. She gave tours to the occasional traveler who wandered by, told stories about the mission's history. On this particular November afternoon, a man in his late 40s walked up, well-dressed, educated-looking. He introduced himself as a professor from Phoenix studying frontier history. Sister Margaret showed him the chapel, the simple altar, the hand-carved pews, and above the altar, mounted on the wall, a Springfield rifle. Why is that there? The professor asked. It belonged to Sister Ruth, the woman who lived here for 32 years. Her will specified it be mounted there. She said, "Let it watch over the mission so I never have to fire it again." It is a reminder of what? That the strongest weapons are the ones we choose not to use. The professor studied the rifle, noted how it was still clean, still oiled, clearly maintained, even though the woman who owned it had been dead a year. She was quite a woman, I gather. She was extraordinary. A warrior who became a peacemaker. A killer who learned to save lives. We should all aspire to that kind of transformation. The professor thanked her, left a donation, walked back to his horse. But before he mounted, he turned and looked at the mission one more time, at the simple building on the rise, at the rifle visible through the window, standing guard over an empty chapel. He thought about the choices people make, about violence and mercy, about who we are versus who we become. Then he rode away, carrying the story with him, as stories are meant to be carried. Inside the chapel, Sister Margaret knelt at the altar, opened the Bible that had belonged to Sister Ruth, found the two pieces of paper pressed between the pages like dried flowers. A name, Corporal James Michael O'Connor. A letter, I forgive you. She read them as she did every week, remembering the woman who had lived here, who had fought and killed and finally found peace. She whispered a prayer. For Sister Ruth, for James, for Tobias and Sam, and all the others whose lives had intersected in this place. Then she closed the Bible, lit a candle, and sat in silence. Above her, the rifle waited, clean and oiled and ready, but silent now, forever silent. And in that silence was the loudest testimony of all. The desert wind blew through the mission, rattling the shutters, stirring dust that danced in shafts of afternoon light. The wind carried stories across the miles, whispers of a woman who had been a legend and chose to become something better. A woman who had killed 63 men and saved 6. A woman who had learned that mercy was harder than violence and infinitely more powerful. A woman named Ruth, the ghost shepherd, who laid down her rifle and picked up a rosary and found redemption in the space between. Her story would be told for generations. In saloons and churches, in courthouses and homes, wherever people gathered to speak of courage and change and the possibility that even the most broken among us can be made whole. And always, always the story would end the same way. With a rifle on a wall, unmoved and unfired. With mercy instead of murder. With peace instead of war. With the whispered truth that echoes still through the Arizona desert, through time itself, simple and profound. She chose mercy, and in choosing saved them all.